Okay, so let's go to 2 Samuel 13. So if you remember, we looked at 2 Samuel 11. David takes Bathsheba, tries to cover it up. Uriah, who's Bathsheba's wife, one of David's 37 faithful men, refuses to go back to his house while his companions are out in the field fighting a war. David eventually sends Uriah back with his own death warrant. Tells Job, the captain of the host, put Uriah in the hottest forefront of the hottest battle and pull back, leave him there so that he dies. Uriah does die. I should have mentioned that Bathsheba sends a message to David, hey, I'm with child. And Uriah's been gone, so there's no way it would have been his. That's why David sent for him to try to cover up his sin. So has Uriah killed, conspires to murder him. He gets murdered. Nathan the prophet confronts David. David repents, but there are consequences. We're going to see some of those consequences in this chapter where God says the sword's never going to depart from your house. You did this thing in secret. I'm going to do what I'm going to do in public. Everybody will see it. And we'll look at that as we go forward. But in chapter 13, so 2 Samuel chapter 13, it says, it came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister whose name was Tamar. And Amnon, the son of David, loved her. So this wasn't really uncommon to have even brother and sister marry back in this day. Especially, it seems like in royal families, very more so common. And remember, David had children by different mothers. So same father, different mothers often. Verse 2, and Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister, lovesick apparently, Tamar, for she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. So he very much wants to be with his sister, and we're going to see where this leads to, and maybe some life lessons that we should consider. So, verse 3, but Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimei, David's brother. So this would have been like his cousin, because David's brother would have been his uncle, Jonadab would have been his cousin, and he was a very subtle man. He was shrewd, he was cunning, he was scheming. He knew how to kind of, scheme things. We'll see that as it goes on. And he said unto him, why art thou, being the king's son, lean from day to day? Why are you depressed? Why are you so miserable? You're the king's son. You should be on top of the world, right? You should be the guy who's the happiest guy. And you don't, you're basically depressed and miserable. And Amnon said unto him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. And Jonadab said unto him, lay thee down on thy bed and make thyself sick, or feign, fake being sick. And when thy father cometh to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come and give me meat, and dress thy meat in my sight, that I may eat it, that I may see it and eat it at her hand. So Amnon lay down and made himself sick. And when the king was come, see, kids are still faking sick to this day, right? So nothing new under the sun, right? He was still too sick to go to school. So, but he asked his father David to send Tamar, his sister, or his half sister, I guess in this case. And when thy father cometh to see thee, and say, I pray thee, let thy sister Tamar come and give me meat, and dress the meat in my sight, that I may see it and eat it at her hand. And Amnon lay down and made himself, or faked himself, sick. And when the king was come in to see him, Amnon said unto the king, I pray thee, let Tamar my sister come and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat at her hand. And David sent home to Tamar, saying, go now to thy brother Amnon's house and dress him meat. So Tamar went to her brother Ammon's house. So she's a good daughter, a good sister. She wants to take care. She wants to do the right thing here. And he was laid down, and she took flour and kneaded it and made cakes in his sight, and did bake the cakes. And she took a pan and poured them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Ammon said, have out all men from me. And they went out, every man from him. This is a dangerous situation for her. She doesn't see any danger in it, but as parents, we have to be in situations where we don't put children or young men and women in situations where this can happen. This is she doesn't see the danger, but when he orders every guy out, she should red flag should be going off. This I'm not. It's not proper for her to be alone with him in this situation. Verse 10. And Ammon said unto Tamar, bring the meat into the chamber that I may eat of thy hand. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a setup at all. I'm gonna eat in my bedroom, breakfast in bed, huh? That I may eat of thy hand. And Tamar took the cakes. Again, I don't think I don't know if that she's either gullible or just innocent. I would say at least she's very innocent here. She's not thinking any evil. That I may eat of thy hand. And Tamar took the cakes that she made and brought them into the chamber to Amnon her brother. And when she had brought them unto him to eat, he took hold of her and he said unto her, come lie with me, my sister. And she said unto him, nay, my brother, do not force me. Do not humble me is really the word. For no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly, this disrespectful thing. Don't do it. It's dishonorable. Then she says, and whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now, therefore, I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. She's like, look, if you want to be with me, just talk to the king. He'll give you to me, and we can do this right. We can do this. She was willing to marry him. It's like, okay, let's do this thing right. Verse 14, howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her and lay with her. So he rapes her. Hey, good to see you, Robert. So Ammon rapes Tamar. These are both children of David by different parents, but he takes her and he rapes her. And this was a big shame to not, for her to not to be a virgin to get married would have been a very hard thing. Would have caused her great shame. We'll see this. There's great consequences to this. But she was like, hey, just let's do this right. If you want me, I'm okay with that. But we got to do it, legally. We got to do it the way God would have us to do it. You ask the king, he'll give me to you for a wife. So he forces her, he rapes her. Verse 15. And then Ammon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he loved her. And Ammon said unto her, rise and be gone. This is not a normal. I mean, they say love and hate are opposite sides of the coin, but this is, for him to spin from, one to the other it sure seems spiritually motivated here to be able to flip a switch like that, to love her so much that he's getting sick, to now, after he rapes her, he hates her. I think to some degree is because he sees in her what the evil that he did. When he looks at her, he can't help but see his own evil. And, now he hates her, which is terrible. So he tells her, arise and be gone. And she said unto him, there's no cause. This evil in sending me away is greater than the other. And thou didst unto me, but he would not hearken unto her. So after he rapes her, he tells her, get lost, and sends her away. And he called his servant that ministered unto him and said, put now this woman out from me, and bolt the door after her. And she had a garment of divers colors upon her, for with such robes were the king's daughters that were virgins apparel. That's what they would wear. Then his servant brought her out and bolted the door after her. And Tamar put ashes on her head and rent or tore her garment of divers colors that was on her, and laid her hands on her head and went on crying. So this was a sign of distress, a sign of mourning. She would tear her garment. She would throw dust in the air, land on her head. And so she's wailing and crying over this horrible thing that just happened to her. Verse 20, and Absalom, her brother. So this is her full brother, not Ammon, her half brother. Absalom, her brother, said unto her, hath Ammon thy brother been with thee? But hold now thy peace, my sister. He is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother's Absalom's house. Desolate, devastating, inconsolable. But he's telling her at this point, don't make this an issue right now. I don't know if this is good advice. It's devastating to Tamar. Her life is just, this man ruined her life. And Absalom, her brother, is going to bide his time, but he's not going to forget. Verse 21, but when King David heard of all these things, he was very wroth. In Deuteronomy, look at Deuteronomy 22. Go for a second. Look at the Old Testament, the law, Deuteronomy 22. And in verse 28, let's say, there's a number of things that would be handled a certain way. Right. So early on we read if somebody was to rape a woman in the countryside, nobody was around, the man would be put to death, the woman would not. If she raped him in the city where she could have cried out and asked for help and she didn't, they would both be put to death. But here it's if she was betrothed already to another man. Verse 28. If a man find a damsel that is a virgin which is not betrothed and lay hold on her and lie with her, and they be found, then the man that lay with her shall give unto his damsel father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her. That's the word that we read. Don't do this thing. Don't shame me. Don't, what was it? How do you actually say it? Don't force me, which is really this word for humble. Don't humble me. And he may not put her away all his days. So this is how this would be handled. There were people there, but he was the king's son. So even though she was the king's daughter, he was the king's son. Men typically had more authority, send away all the servants, and then he takes her, basically wrecks her life. Her brother's not forgetting. David knows about this and doesn't do anything. Her brother Absalom knows about this, and he's going to start making plans. In verse 22 of 2 Samuel 13, Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced or humbled his sister Tamar. He won't speak. He's not even speaking to him. I will not speak to him. So there's a rift there in the family. And it came to pass after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shearers in Balhazar, which is beside Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. Oh yeah, why don't you guys all come down? We're going to be shearing the sheep. And the king said to Absalom, nay, my son, let us not all go now, lest we be chargeable or burdensome unto thee. And he pressed him, albeit he would not go, but blessed him. Look, no, you go along, go do your thing. I don't need to go down there. I'm good. Verse 26. Verse 26. Then said Absalom, if not, I pray thee, let my brother Amnon go with me. And the king said to him, why should he go with thee? Now, king's not stupid. He's probably got a feeling, hey, there's still bad blood here, because Absalom doesn't speak to Amnon. But Absalom pressed him that he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Let everybody go, not just Absalom, kind of covering his tracks a little bit here. Verse 28. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, mark ye now when Ammon's heart is merry with wine. And when I say unto you, smite Ammon, then kill him. Fear not, for I have commanded you. Be courageous and be valiant. So he's not going to do it himself, but he is commanding his men. When he's happy and he's in, like, he thinks everything's great, I'm going to command you to kill him, and you're going to do it, and I'll cover you because I'm commanding it. Verse 29, the servants of Absalom did unto Ammon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's son arose, and every man got him up upon his mule and fled. So when this happens, all of the rest of the sons scatter. They get the hell out of there. They're not thrilled about this happening, but this is really a revenge killing for what he did to Tamar. Verse 30, it came to pass while they were in the way that tidings came to David saying, Absalom had slain all the king's son, and there's not one left of them. That's not true, but that's what was told David. And the king arose and tare his garments and lay on the earth, and all his servants stood by with their clothes rent. So everybody's mourning, thinking, all my sons are dead except Absalom. And sometimes the heirs would do this to make sure there wasn't anybody else vying for the throne. But that's not what Absalom did. Absalom killed Amnon for raping his sister Tamar. Verse 32, and Jonadab, the son of Shimei, David's brother, so this would have been David's nephew, answered and said, let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's son, for Amnon only is dead, and by the appointment of Absalom, this has been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar, that he humbled his sister Tamar. This was going to happen. He had made a plan for it. He was waiting for the right time. He did it so that this would not go unavenged. Verse 33, now therefore let not my lord the king take the thing to his heart to think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead. But Absalom fled, and the young man that kept the watch lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there came much people by the way of the hill side behind him. And Jonadab said unto the king, behold, the king's son come. And thy servant said, so it is. And it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of speaking, that behold, the king's son came and lifted up their voice and wept. And the king also and all his servants wept very sore. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur. David mourned for his son every day. So this is like his mother's grandfather's grandfather. So he goes to somewhere where he has family, but he flees out of Jerusalem because he's afraid that David might take, revenge on him for killing Absalom. Verse 39. The soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, but he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. So comfort is he finished mourning, or he stopped grieving, he finished grieving. But there's a period of time when you lose, even though what Amnon did to Tamar was horrible, he still grieved for his son. And sometimes that's the way of a parent. One of the things I think we have to learn from this is not to leave young men and women alone, especially unmarried, but even so, there are just fences that we need to put up. There are things that we have to consider with human nature. In some ministries, they rightfully, I think rightfully so, men and women don't travel together unless there are other men and women with them to chaperone each other, where each watch out for the other. It's not, to be in intimate situations where this kind of thing can happen. How many Christian ministries have been destroyed over, sexual, relationships, immoral sexual relationships, where somebody was in a situation, oh, nobody's going to know. You know what? God knows. And believe me, people find out. We need to just have a certain morality that we're not willing to compromise on. People do different things. The Bible says, greet the brethren with a holy kiss, right? Which is fine. For me, that means that I don't kiss another woman on the mouth who's not my wife. This is me. This is how I keep a boundary. I'll offer my cheek, I'll hug. And again, when I hug, I keep my body away so that it doesn't get creepy. There are things that we can do to draw a boundary around stuff. Even if you have young children, if you get children that are 10, 12 years old, it's not a great idea to leave young men and young women necessarily unchaperoned, because this kind of thing has been happening for thousands of years, and it can have devastating effects. It basically wrecked Tamar's life, and it cost not Absalom, but Amnon. It cost him his life ultimately. As parents, we have to look and say, that's not okay. It's the same thing about not necessarily trusting strangers with your children. Oh, I want to sleep over so-and-so's house. If I don't know them, I don't know if I'm going for that, because I just think it's too easy for things to happen, and your kids need to be protected. Here, these were older. They weren't young, but they shouldn't have been. She should not have been alone in his bedroom, especially. That's one of the things we learn and we read. So chapter 14, verse 1 says, now Joab, the son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was towards Absalom. Joab is the captain of the host. Remember, he's the one who kind of 5-star general, runs the army. And Joab sent to Tekoa and fetched thee a wise woman and said unto her, I pray thee, feign thyself to be a mourner and put on thou mourning apparel and anoint not thyself with oil, but be as one of the women that a long time had mourned for the dead, and come to the king and speak on this manner unto him. So Joab put the words in her mouth. So Joab's kind of trying to manipulate the king. He's trying to put the situation together where this woman's going to speak to the king to kind of bring Absalom back. Verse 3, and come to the king and speak on this manner unto him. So Joab put words in her mouth, and when the woman of Tekoa spake unto the king, she fell on her face to the ground and did obeisance and said, help, O king. And the king said unto her, what aileth thee? And she answered, I am indeed a widow woman, and my husband is dead. And thy husband had 2 sons, and thy two strove together in the field. and there was none to part them, but the one smote the other and slew him. So one of my sons killed the other son. Behold, the whole family is risen against thy handmaid, and they said, deliver him that smote his brother, that we may kill him for a life of his brother whom he slew, and we will destroy the heir also. And they shall quench my coal which is left, and shall not leave to my husband neither name nor remainder upon the earth. So this was kind of a big deal, that to have her husband have seed, to be able to, one, to take care of her mother. The son would be responsible for caring for his mother, but also to carry on the family name. That was all going to go. And so she's talking to the king about, hey, they want to kill him. Can you please intervene here? Verse 8, and the king said unto the woman, go to thine house, and I will give charge concerning thee. And the woman of Tekah said unto the king, my lord, O king, the inquiry be on me and on my father's house, and the king and his throne be guiltless. And the king said, whosoever said aught unto thee, bring him to me, and he shall not touch thee any more. Then she said, I pray thee, let the king remember the Lord thy God, that thou wouldest not suffer the revenges of blood to destroy any more, lest they destroy my son. And he said, as the Lord liveth, there shall not one hair on thy son fall to the earth. And the woman said, let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak one word unto my lord the king. And he said, say on. So, hey, I got something else to say. So he said, okay, you can talk freely. And the woman said, wherefore then hast thou thought such a thing against the people of God? For the king doth speak the thing as one which is faulty, and the king doth not fetch home again his banished. Hey, what about you, king? You have a son in this situation. You just gave commandment to me, physician, heal thyself. Dude, take the wisdom of the word you gave to me back to yourself. For we must needs die, and we are as water spilt on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. I can't bring back my first son, but I don't want to lose my second. You can't bring back Amnon, but you're going to lose Absalom. Neither doth God respect any person, yet doth he devise means that his banished be not expelled from him. There's forgiveness. David knows this. David knows that he killed Uriah and was forgiven. David knows that forgiveness is possible, even for a murder, which he'd been in. Now, therefore, verse 15, I am come to speak of this thing unto the Lord the king. If it is because the people have made me afraid, and the handmaid said, I will now speak unto the king. It may be that the king will perform the request of his handmaid, for the king will hear to deliver his handmaid out of the hand of the man that would destroy me and my son together out of the inheritance of God. Once you cut off that name from Israel, that family line is gone, which was a big deal. So they're saying, don't let this happen. Then thy handmaid said, the word of my lord the king shall now be comfortable, for as an angel of God, so is the Lord the king, to discern good and bad. Therefore the Lord thy God be with thee. So, hey, you're getting your wisdom from God. What you said to me is wise. And she's trying to encourage him to take his own advice. Verse 18. Then the king answered and said unto the woman, hide not from me, I pray thee, the thing that I shall ask thee. And the woman said, let my lord the king speak. And the king said, is not the hand of Joab with thee in all of this? He's not fooled. He goes, did Joab put you up to this? He's got wisdom. The Spirit of God is still on David. And God is working in David. He goes, hey, Joab put you up to this, right? He gets word of knowledge. And the woman answered and said, as thy soul liveth, my lord the king, none can turn to the right hand or to the left from aught that my lord the king hath spoken. For thy servant Joab, he bade me, and he put all these words in my mouth of thy handmaid, to fetch about this form of speech, that thy servant Joab done this thing. And my Lord is wise according to the wisdom of the angel of God to know all the things that are in the earth. God's given you word of wisdom. You clearly saw right through me, but it's still the right thing to do, she's saying. And Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, today thy servant knoweth that I have found grace in thy sight, my lord, O king, in that the king hath fulfilled the request of his servant. You're gonna let Absalom come back. So he's gonna go get him. So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And the king said, let him turn to his own house and let him not see my face. So Absalom returned to his own house and saw not the king's face. Again, just because you're forgiven doesn't mean there aren't consequences. There are consequences for Absalom. The king's like, hey, I don't want him to be before me. I don't want him in my court. I don't want him in my house. I don't want him, I don't want to see his face. So Absalom goes to his house and the king will not see him at this point. Still, he didn't die. He didn't kill him, which, kind of a big deal. Verse 25. But in all Israel, there was none to be so much praised as Absalom for his beauty from the sole of his foot even to the crown of his head. There was no blemish in him. So he was a very beautiful man. He was very handsome. And so much so that everybody in Israel was impressed with him. In fact, verse 26, and when he polled his head, for it was at every year's end that he polled it. This is talking about a haircut. He's cutting his hair. He had beautiful long hair, we'll see. When he polled his head, for it was at every year's end that he polled it, because the hair was heavy on him. Therefore, he polled it. He weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels after the king's weight. So about 5 pounds worth of hair. That's a haircut. Cut about 5 pounds worth of hair. He must have had very long, beautiful hair. And unto Absalom there were born 3 sons and one daughter whose name was Tamar. So he names his daughter apparently after his sister. She was a woman of fair countenance, and Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem and saw not the king's face. So the king is fairly steadfast, and I don't want to see him. He can come back, but he's not allowed to come into my presence. Verse 29, therefore Absalom sent for Joab to have sent him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. So Joab spoke on his behalf. So he's thinking, well, Joab's kind of in my corner. Let me see if I can get him to go talk to the king for me. But he wouldn't come to see him because the king was pretty steadfast on not seeing him. So Joab wasn't going to do it. Therefore he said unto his servant, see, Job's field is near mine, and he hath barley there. Go and set it on fire. And Absalom's servant set the field on fire. Then Joab arose and came to Absalom unto his house and said unto him, wherefore hath thy servant set my field on fire? And Absalom answered Joab, because I sent unto thee, saying, come hither, that I may send thee to the king to say, wherefore am I come from Gersha? It had been good for me to have been there still. Now therefore let me see the king's face, and if it be any iniquity in me, let him kill me. He believes what he did was just and right, that it was a revenge for the rape of Tamar, and that it was justified. The king still loved Amnon, so he's still punishing Absalom here. So the only way to get Job's attention was to light his field on fire. Do I have your attention now? And he came, verse 33. So Joab came to the king and told him, and when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. So there is a reconciliation here between Absalom and King David. So now the plot thickens. Chapter 15. It came to pass after this that Absalom prepared him chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. So he kind of starts a little small army of his own. And he is a prince of Israel, so he's got a certain amount of authority, and people respond to that and respect that. But he's kind of doing this of his own initiative. He's not going to David and go, hey, I want to do this thing. He's kind of doing it on his own. Verse 2, and Absalom rose up early and stood beside the way of the gate. And it was so when any man had a controversy, came to the king for judgment, that Absalom called unto him and said, of what city art thou? And he said, thy servant is one of the tribes of Israel. So he's setting himself up as a judge. The gate is where judgment happened, is where business was done, and where judgment, like, hey, this guy stole, I lent this guy $20 and he never paid me back. He's a bum. I want you to force him to pay me back, or this guy killed one of my cattle and he's not, he hasn't made me whole. So Absalom sets himself up as a judge in verse 3. And Absalom said unto him, see, thy matters are good and right, and there is no man disputed on the king to hear thee. Hey, the king's not doing this, I'm doing this. And Absalom said, moreover, oh, that I were made judge in the land, that every man that hath any suit or cause might come unto me, and I would do him justice. And it was so that when any man came nigh to him to do him obeisance, that he put forth his hand and took him and kissed him. So he's kind of brown-nosing a little bit, but he's trying to win over the people. On this manner did Absalom to all Israel that came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. He's basically working behind the king's back to supplant him. And we'll see as we go on. verse 7. And it came to pass after 40 years. I believe this is 4 years, not 40. It might be 40 years from the beginning reign of David. So I don't believe it was 40 years in time from when we just read to what we're talking about now. I believe it was 4 years, and the 40 might have been from when David started to reign. That Absalom said unto the king, I pray thee, let me go and pay my vows which I have vowed unto the Lord in Hebron. Hebron was his birthplace. That's where David was set up before he became king, where he had really most of his children were born in Hebron. So Absalom goes, I'm going to go back to Hebron because I have a vow to pay unto the Lord. For thy servant vowed a vow, saying, while I abode at Gershom in Syria, saying, if the Lord shall bring me again indeed to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord. I've got to pay this vow that I vowed. And the king said unto him, go in peace. And he arose and went to Hebron. And Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, as soon as ye hear the sound of the trumpet, then ye shall say, Absalom reigneth in Hebron. So he's orchestrating a coup, a takeover. You know, David gets chased and almost killed by Saul. Then he finally becomes king of Judah. Then God brings him to become king of Israel and Judah. And now one of his sons, Absalom, is going to drive him from the throne. Remember, there was a prophecy in 2 Samuel 12. We'll look at it in a minute. That God said, you know, what you've done to Uriah, you did in secret. What I'm going to do to you, I'm going to do before all Israel. Everybody's going to see it. Because there were consequences. Did God forgive David? Yes. Were there still consequences to the action he took? Yes. And that's what we're seeing. Verse 10. But Absalom said, oh, no, we read that. There we go. Verse 11. And when Absalom went, 200 men out of Jerusalem that were called and went in their simplicity, and they knew not anything. So they're going with him. Hey, this is the king's son. They're not thinking that this is a coup or an uprising. They're just traveling with him. Verse 12. And Absalom sent to Ahithophel, the Gibeonite, David's counselor, from his city, even from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices. And the conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually with Absalom. So he's building up support to take over the kingdom. And there came a messenger to David saying, the heart of the men of Israel are after Absalom. You lost the people, David. And David said unto all his servants that were with him at Jerusalem, arise and let us flee, for we shall not else escape from Absalom. Make speed to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly and bring evil upon us and smite the city with the edge of the sword. He goes, we got to get out of here, because if we don't, and remember, David had the Spirit of God still, so God's like, you better hightail it out of here. If Absalom catches you here in Jerusalem, he's going to kill you and all the people that stand with you. Verse 15, and the king's servant said unto the king, behold, thy servants are ready to do whatsoever my lord the king shall appoint. And the king went forth and all his household after him. And the king left 10 women, which were concubines, to keep the house. A concubine was like almost like a mistress. It was more of a mistress is probably a bad word. They weren't married, but there was a relationship with the king that no other man could have this one. She was specifically with him. She didn't have marriage, but being a concubine, I think Solomon had like 300 wives and 500 concubines. So David has 10 here. Verse 17, the king went forth and all the people after him and tarried in a place that was far off, and his servants passed on beside him, and all the Cherethites and all the Pelethites and all the Gittites, 600 men which came after him from Gath, passed on before him. So remember, when he was at Gath, he had about 600 men that followed him. These guys are still with him. They're still, supporting him. They're still with him. Then said the king to Ittai the Gittite, wherefore goest thou also with us? Return to thy place and abide with the king, for thou art a stranger and also an exile. Wherefore thou camest but yesterday, should I this day make thee go up and down with us? Whither I go, whither I may return, thou, and take back thy brethren, mercy and truth be with thee. Hey, I know you want to go with us, but you're kind of new to this. Why don't you just go home? And Ittai answered the king and said, as the Lord liveth, as the Lord my king liveth, surely in what place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also will thy servant be. I'm going with you. Whether you live or die, I'm going to stand with you. So this guy's like, hey, you're not going to dissuade me. And David said to Ittai, go and pass over. Okay, you can come. And Ittai the Gittite passed over, and all his men and all the little ones that were with him. And all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people passed over. The king also passed over the brook Kidron, and all the people passed over towards the way of the wilderness. This isn't something that's unknown to David. David has spent a lot of time in the wilderness running from Saul. Now David's spending time in the wilderness running from Absalom. We didn't really look at the prophecy, but go back to 2 Samuel 12. This is the word of Nathan to David. And David gets forgiven, but there are consequences, and the consequences. So in verse 9, it says, "Wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of the Lord to do evil in his sight? Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon." You killed him, but you conspired to murder him by unbelievers. Now, therefore, the sword shall never depart from thy house. You're never going to know peace, David, because thou hast despised me and hast taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. Remember that little thing, do not commit adultery? Yeah, you despised me and you just went ahead and did it because you were king. You thought that you can do what you want. No, the king's under the law like every other man. 11, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will rise up evil against thee out of thine own house. Isn't that what's happening with Absalom right now? Evil is risen up out of David's own house, and I will take thy wives from before thine eyes and give them unto thy neighbors, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of the sun. But thou did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. So David repents, gets forgiven, but those consequences still come to pass. Go back to 2 Samuel 15, verse 24. And lo, Zadok also and all the Levites were with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar went up until all the people had done passing out of the city. And the king said unto Zadok, carry back the ark of God into the city. If I shall find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me again and show me both it and his habitation. Hey, let's not take the ark with us. Bring it back to where we put it. God will bring, if God is blessed with me, he'll bring me back in there and I'll see it again, but I don't want to take it with us. So verse 26, but if he thus say, I have no delight in thee, behold, here I am, let him do to me as seemeth good unto me. David was like, if the Lord's unhappy with me, he can take me off the throne just like he did Saul. God, he's seen it happen to Saul. So he's like, if God delights in me, he'll take care of this thing. If he doesn't, then I'll be put down like Saul was put down. Verse 27, the king said also unto Zadok the priest, art not thou a seer? Return into the city in peace, and your two sons with you, Amahaz thy son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will tarry in the plain of the wilderness until there come word from you to certify me. Zadok therefore and Abiathar carried the ark of God again to Jerusalem, and they tarried there. So they're on David's side, but they've gone back to Jerusalem with the ark. So verse 30, and David went as by the ascent of Mount Olivet. So he's on Mount Olive, the Mount of Olives where Jesus prayed, and wept, and he wept up, and his head covered, and he went barefoot, and all the people that were with him covered every man his head, and they went up weeping as they went. So this is a sad time for David. So there's a mourning that's going on. And one told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Lord, I pray thee, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. Right? We can pray prayers like that when there are people conspiring against us. Right? What's that wonderful verse that no weapon formed against me shall prosper? When we're walking with God, there is a protection that we have. I've heard stories of witches that have gotten born again. They said, damn, we were trying to attack this minister or attack this grandmother who prayed. We couldn't get near her because the protection of God was so strong. We couldn't even get into the neighborhood. They literally kept us out of that neighborhood, and when we were trying to corrupt it. There is a spiritual war going on, and God will protect us if we will keep sin out of our life. And when we sin, we ask for forgiveness, we get restored, and then God continues to protect us. But we don't want to dwell in sin because it leaves an open door for the adversary to attack us. So David was seeing this, and he said, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. Verse 32, and it came to pass that when David was come to the top of the mount where he worshiped God, behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his coat rent and earth upon his head. So he's mourning too. 33, unto whom David said, if thou pass on with me, then thou shalt be a burden unto me. But if thou return to the city and say unto Absalom, I will be thy servant, O king, as I have been thy father's servant hereunto, so will I now be thy servant, then mayest thou for me defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. Go back to, tell the king you're going to work for him, like you worked for me. Now, Absalom would have known who this guy was because he was in the court of David. This was a counselor, and kings typically need guys like this to run the kingdom. They can't do it on their own. So he's going to go back in and say, hey, I'll be your man just like I was your father's man before you, because, I want to serve Israel. So we'll see. Verse 35, and hast thou not there with thee Zadok and Ahithophel the priest? Therefore it shall be that what things soever thou shalt hear out of the king's house, thou shalt tell it to Zadok and Abithar the priest. They're on my side too. So when you hear what's going on, you tell them, they'll get word to me. Behold, they have there with them the two sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abithar's son. And by them you shall send unto me everything that you can hear. So Hushai, David's friend, came into the city, and Absalom came to Jerusalem. So we see the consequences of David's sin. And now, well, we only saw part of it. We saw that evil has arisen out of his house. We haven't seen anybody lay with his wives yet in public. That's coming. And we'll read that in the next chapter. We have some time. Let's keep reading. And when David was, chapter 16, verse 1, and when David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of asses saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread and 100 dread bunches of raisins and 100 summer fruits and a bottle of wine. So who is this guy? So Ziba was the servant of Jonathan, and Mephibosheth is who David raised up to take Jonathan. Told Ziba, look, you're going to work for Mephibosheth. He's Jonathan's heir, and you'll run things for him because he was crippled, and he'll eat at my table. So he's saying this, hey, now Ziba comes out, here's David's on the run, and brings him supplies, right? Verse 2. And the king said unto Ziba, what meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, the asses are for the king's household to ride on, the bread and the summer fruit are for the young men to eat, and the wine be as such as faint in the wilderness may drink. And the king said, where is thy master's son? And Ziba said unto the king, behold, he abideth at Jerusalem. For he said, today shall the house of Israel restore me to the kingdom of my father. He thinks he's going to be king again. Oh, he's going to be king. Not going to happen. But he's going back to basically take Absalom's side. Verse 4. Then said the king to Ziba, behold, thine are all that pertaineth unto Mephibosheth. And Ziba said, I humbly beseech thee that I may find grace in thy sight, my lord the king. So David said, everything that belonged to Mephibosheth now belongs to you, Ziba. I've just stripped him of all his rights and titles and given it to you. And when King David came to Baram, behold, there came out a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, and the son of Gera, and he came forth and cursed still as he came. And he cast stones at David, and all the servants of the king David, and all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. Thus said Shimei when he cursed, come out, thou bloody man, thou man of Belial. So this is like the highest insult you could give somebody. You're a child of the devil. You're a bloody man. You're a terrible person. And he's throwing rocks at him and cursing the king. And the Lord hath returned upon thee, verse 8, all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose stead thou hast reigned. He didn't kill Saul. He didn't kill Saul's kids. He didn't kill Jonathan. In fact, if anything, he searched out for Jonathan's son to put him in a place of honor, to bring him to the king's table. And now how has he repaid him? He's gone after Absalom, and he's trying to see David, harmed. This guy this guy's nasty, and he has nothing. He's not nothing that he's saying is true about David. The Lord hath returned upon thee all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose stead thou hast reigned, and the Lord hath delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom, thy son, and behold, thou art taken in thy mischief, because thou art a bloody man. Then said Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, unto the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take off his head. Hang on a second, king. I'm just going to go over and remove his head from his shoulders so he shuts the hell up. And the king said, what have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah? And let him curse. Behold, the Lord hath said unto him, curse David. Who shall say then, wherefore hast thou done so? David's feeling pretty low. He's like, look, I feel like God's, doing this to me because of my sin, because of what I did. And he said he was going to do this to me. Leave him alone. I don't want to, add to this. And David, verse 11, David said to Abishai and to all his servants, behold, thy son, which cameth forth of my bowels, seeketh my life. How much more now many may this Benjamite do it? Let him alone and let him curse, for the Lord hath bidden him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will requite me good for his cursing this day. God's still not done with me, I don't think. And David and his men went by the way of Shimei, went along the hillside over against him, and cursed as he went, and threw stones at them and cast dust. And the king and all the people that were with him came weary and refreshed themselves there. And Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. This is the guy who's David prayed, let his counsel become folly. And it came to pass when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, was come over to Absalom, that Hushai said unto Absalom, God save the king, God save the king. And Absalom said to Hushai, is thy kindness to thy friend? Thou wentest thou not with thy, why didn't you go with my father? And Hushai said unto Absalom, nay, but whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel choose, his will I be, and with him will I abide. So whoever God puts in as king, I'm going to serve, and that's you. And again, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of, again, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son, as I have served in thy father's presence? So will I be in thy presence. Then said Absalom to Ahithophel, give counsel among you what we shall do. And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, go in unto thy father's concubines, which he hath left to keep the house. And all Israel shall hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall the hands of all them that are with thee be strong. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house, and Absalom went in with his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. There is the fulfillment of the second part of the consequences of David's sin. And the counsel of Ahithophel, which was counseled in those days, was if a man had acquired of the oracle of God, and was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. So this guy, hey, your father's going to hate you because you're going to go in. It was a very disrespectful thing for Absalom to do this to his father's concubines. It was considered very ungodly, too, that a man should lay with his father's wife or his father's concubine. It wasn't something that was acceptable or cool to do. So we have the consequences of David's sin come to pass. David's now on the run. Absalom is going to rule Israel from Jerusalem, but not for a super long time. But we've seen David. I'll recommend to you, if you ever get a chance, or maybe you go on to Amazon or Christian bookstore, The Tale of Three Kings is a very short read, the very powerful book on lessons we can take on how did David respond to Saul? How did David respond to Absalom? And how did David, stand righteous before God? David made mistakes, certainly. But God's judgment on David at the end of his life was he was a man after God's own heart. Absalom will not have that same testimony. So, talk about some heavy material. You can see the Bible doesn't shy away from difficult subjects. People say, oh, yeah, Bible doesn't talk about this stuff. You tell somebody this is in the Bible, there's rape, murder, there's conspiracy. They'll say, that's in the Bible? Yeah, because it's human nature. And we need to learn from that. So not to leave young men and women in situations where this can happen, to protect young men and women so that this doesn't happen. To draw boundaries that are godly so that, oh, that's very old fashioned. Okay, that's what you believe. That's fine. You can believe that. I think it's a very godly thing to do, to draw boundaries, to say, you know, I had a guy once say to me at work, everybody cheats. I go, that's not true. I don't cheat. He goes, yeah, me neither. I go, why'd you say that? He goes, I don't know. Everybody says it. I go, well, you know what? I don't say it. So, and if you don't cheat, then don't you say it. To be someone who's going to, people need to know that there's hope in life to have godly relationships. Because, oh my God, our society is so messed up. People just, there's no trust. And, if you don't build trust, you can't really have intimacy. You can't have genuine, godly intimacy if you don't trust each other. So there has to be trust. So when we go into a marriage situation and we say, look, I'm never going to cheat on you, say those words to your spouse. I'm never going to, I expect you never cheat on me, and make that commitment and keep that commitment and live that way. If there's times we haven't done that, we can be forgiven like David was forgiven, but then we can raise our conduct and raise our behavior to live godly lives. Because when we don't, we leave doors open to be attacked by the adversary. And too many Christian ministries have failed because men haven't been moral enough to say no. The adversary, it's one of his staple attacks is sexual immorality. He attacks, make it easy, and then what do you have then? Then you have blackmail. You have, it's terrible. I mean, our government. The reason why these Epstein files haven't been released is it's going to take half of Washington with them, which I'm perfectly fine with that. If you're on the list and you were abusing people, then you should end up in jail, or at the very least, no, you should end up in jail. And if those names come out and those accusations can be proven, send them to jail. Someone once said, if you take me down, I'll take half Washington with me. And what's the problem with that? If that's the case, I'll sign up for that deal. In Rome, if you were a corrupt politician, they would cut off your nose. I don't think there'd be a nose left in Washington, D.C. if we use that standard, But we need people to live, we need to live godly lives so we can inspire a younger generation to live godly lives. And we're going to make mistakes, don't get me wrong, but we're going to ask God for forgiveness. And then we're not going to wallow in that mistake. We're going to get up. God, help me not do that again. Help me go back to living a godly life. And so that we have that wall of protection from the adversary, because the devil's going to try to trick you. He does it. That's his thing. And he's the father of lies. But we can live, be holy as I am holy, God said. When I first heard that, I was overwhelming to me. It's like, but God has placed Holy Spirit in you. So the best example, buddy of mine, Tom, used to say, it's like you have this beat up, rusted out old beer can that's shot full of holes, but you look inside of it and it's filled in diamonds. Wow, that's a great old beer can. Can I have that? That's good. I'll keep that. That's us. I may not have the greatest outside, whatever, but God has placed Holy Spirit in you and I. So we can be holy because we have Holy Spirit. We're never going to do it. God doesn't say, try not to sin and you'll be spiritual. It says, walk in the Spirit and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. You can't reach forward and reach backwards at the same time. So if I'm reaching forward to walk in the Spirit, all of that other stuff falls away. And that's how it was designed to be. Not because I have such great willpower and I'm going to tough it out, because I'm choosing to follow God in his ways and walk in a spiritual life. We can manifest godliness in our life. True, genuine godliness, which is that wonderful relationship with God. So questions, comments, it's some very heavy material, right, guys? That's like, holy cow, but this is stuff people deal with. And to know that the Bible talks about it, it's important, because you're going to deal with people who are in real life situations, and we can't shy away from that. If someone finds themselves and they need to be restored, we can't be like, oh, geez, I never heard about anybody who's done that. Well, the Bible talks about it. So of course we've heard of people who've done that. Let's talk about how to restore our brothers and sisters back to fellowship and help them live a godly life. So that's heavy. So, I mean, but what color commentary on believers walking in super difficult situations and how God worked with them in very difficult, even within family. Sometimes we think, oh, my family puts the fun in dysfunctional, you know. Sometimes we say other things, but we think, oh, it's my family. Nobody had a family like me. David, one brother's killing another, the other brother's chasing him off the throne and sleeping with his concubines, you know. And David knew that that was because God had told him, look, you're gonna suffer these consequences because of your sin. You've been forgiven. You're not going to die like Saul did, but there will be consequences. And David definitely experienced them, and we saw them come to pass. So that's all I got tonight, guys. So I'm going to stop the recording, and then we'll close out in prayer. Hold on.